something that was very prevalent, but not quite in the sense of radicalization in the way we know of it today, whatever, like 6 odd years later. But what the idea, so what happens in Hushabye Baby is that in the course of investigating how Nandita has been carrying out and what she's been doing in her clinic, uh, this cop uh, uncovers that she was part of an online message board, a group that used an online message board to effectively um, coordinate each other's activities and carry out certain criminal acts. And each person sort of different people have carried out different what they call missions. And Nandita Rai's mission was to make sure that girls are not born because this world does not deserve them, essentially. Um, there is a very strong case to be made for what you just said, which is that that the internet group is what radicalizes her. And the thing is that, I mean, it's very interesting for me to see it now, because when I was writing it, I didn't think of it that way. Like, we didn't see the internet as that kind of a medium at that point of time, even though of course it was happening all around us. So in hindsight
Yeah.
now, it makes a lot of sense, and it feels like
Because
I was
something,
definitely responding to that.
yeah, because now that I think about it, I mean, something happens to her in her life. Again, has a privileged life. Her husband is a well-connected, rich guy in the building business, real estate, whatnot, and she has this clinic. She's this activist. She's this witty, provocative talk show guest, frequent talk show guest, as I read earlier. And then something happens to her, and then she meets people, and these people draw her in, and she becomes somebody else. And if she had met other people, right, that have maybe dealt with what happened to her in a different, more constructive way, a more healing way, she wouldn't have
Hmm.
been so radicalized. And arguably, this only could have happened by being connected. Although these people are local, actually. Um, so I don't know. I don't know what my point is. I'm.
No, I mean, they
I
are.
think my point is we
You're
need to
right.
shut down the internet. Is my point, I guess.
No, no, please don't. This is the only reason we're being able to do this is because of the
That is
internet. So,
true. That is true.
let's not shut it down completely. No, the point is exactly what you just said, that, what is the community that you find yourself in, and what do you gravitate towards? What will you do with your anger and with your pain? You will find the thing with the internet is that you will find whatever it is that perhaps you're looking for,
Hmm.
whether you're looking for the toxicity or you're looking for the good people and the good ideas, you will find whatever it is that you are gravitating towards at that point of time. So it's in that sense, it's a very mature device. It requires maturity out of you as
Yes.
well.
Yeah. That's right.
So yeah.
Maturity in and maturity out. If you go into that with a certain, with your identity fully formed, or not fully, or at least sort of your basic moral convictions formed, then the internet will be amazing. And if not,
Mm,
the likelihood of you falling prey to any number of demagogues is more likely, I guess. Or if you fall,
absolutely.
if you have a traumatic experience. I mean, okay, I'm not going to get off this tangent with my friend's wife from Scotland, who lost her brother tragically from cancer, and then she got sucked, and she was 45, and she got sucked into a certain demagogue online. I'm not going to mention his name. His name shall not be mentioned. But one of these intellectual dark web types. Anyways, let's move on. You're living a creative life, Jana. And so the next
Mm.
segment of this program, I want to ask you, is it worth it? Because in in our onboarding and our initial hangout, you were talking about the reputation of people in India who pursue a career of creativity, whatever that is. I don't know, music, arts, writing, and such. And if I remember correctly, you told me this anecdote where a relative of yours acknowledged that you are smart, that you're not dumb. So why are you doing what you're doing? Do you want to retell this anecdote and tell us a little bit of your your stature in the hierarchy there as a writer?
Well, my stature, I'm 5 feet tall, so that's about as high as my stature goes. But no. So yeah, basically there's a neat hierarchy in Indian society where if you are smart, then you study the sciences. If you are not smart, you study the liberal arts. Um, Everybody likes someone who is creative if they are also going to make a lot of money from it, which of course most people do not do with creative work. So when I decided that I was going to study English literature in university, an uncle of mine took me aside and very earnestly looked at me and said that, look, you're not stupid. You can do economics at least, if not physics. You could try, just aim higher. I was like, thanks, man. That's really big of you. So um,
And this is funny
the
because you
creative,
mentioned, I mean, the important part is, of course, if you happen to strike it rich, then all that stuff is irrelevant because that's really the legitimate
yeah,
the
yeah,
ticket in. Then you made the right choice.
then you're fine. I mean, as long as you, but the thing is that everybody realizes, I think most people realize that, you don't have those guarantees. The reason at the end of the day, the prosaic reason that our elders have suggested we take sensible paths and sensible careers is because they would like us to have a certain kind of stability, a financial and economic stability. That's the sort of thing that a creative life does not offer you, frankly. So,
Well, the good
so
thing
I
is what
mean,
I told people after the financial crisis, all the people that I went to high school with, who was like, "Oh, Drax, you're so stupid. You're gonna be ending up poor. I'm gonna be a banker." It was a little glee that I had after the financial crisis that they were all out of a job. But the unfortunate thing is they took the world with them, so that's not too great. Anyways, go ahead,
yeah,
please continue.
yeah, no, so yeah, if you're looking for stability, then the creative profession is not one that will give it to you. But it's also like that's why I sometimes think that I've had, I think, uh, a lucky life. I mean, I've worked hard for it, but hard work does not ever guarantee things. All of us know that.
Mm,
Many of us work extremely hard and don't find the kind of returns that we should get for the kind of effort we put in. I've been fortunate because I've had more situations where the hard work that I've put in has given me what I hoped it would give me. Sometimes it's given me a lot more than I thought it would. The children's books are a great example of that. I have got so much love for this little character that I came up with just you know very casually while just chatting with a friend of mine. I came up with the idea of this bookworm who wants a book to read, and she's just run out of books. And this child has become such an important part of so many people's lives. I've
that's
realized,
true.
mostly because it's also open access, so it's freely accessible to anyone who wants to read it. So a lot of the times the things that you think will work don't, but the things that you didn't think were going to do
Yes,
much end up
yes.
being fantastic. So this is stuff that you can't control, but I do think that I'm a journalist, I'm a writer, I'm an editor. I've ended up using my love for reading and literature in different ways, and my love for the arts in different ways. It's not been the easiest thing to do, not just because of money, that's the least important part of it, I think, but because you're using you're using the things that you love to try and make a living out of that as well. And that can sometimes be very frustrating, and
Mm,
that can be hard to do as well. So in that sense, I think the uncle who was telling me to study economics and get a 9 to 5 job, he may have been onto something, because
yeah.
then I would have had a 9 to 5 job, which let me work from 7 to midnight on my book, and then wake up in the morning and do that 9 to 5 job again. Instead, I'm a journalist and I have no fixed hours, and I scrounge time in a day to figure out when I can get a little bit of writing done. I'm happy, but it could have been a different life, and it could have been an easier life if I had taken more pragmatic decisions.
But you don't know that. I mean, you don't know if you had the
No, no,
energy,
of course not.
if your 9 to 5 job would be so draining that you wouldn't have the energy. But you said something important that I want people in the audience, if they're sort of thinking of us or people in this field, that this is so glamorous. You just said, well, you're writing. So what do you mean? I mean, you made your passion to a job, but pick that apart a little bit, because I think that's what people don't understand. That yes, you have a pen and you're putting that pen to paper or the keyboard to the Google Docs or whatever, but it's not the same thing. I mean, working on your own on your own passion project on your book versus being hired by someone and having an editor where you have to adhere to certain things, you're in that situation of an employee. That can actually be, I think, arguably worse for someone who is more passionately tied to that particular activity, right? So it's
Yeah,
easier
I
for
think it's
someone who,
frustrating.
yeah.
It's frustrating more than anything else. Like, for example, my job is to edit a film critique website called Film Companion. Now, left to my own devices, I would be very happy reviewing only films like, say, After Sun, which came out recently, a hauntingly beautiful and sad film about a father and a daughter's relationship. Or something like the documentary Fire of Love or All That Breathes. I'd be very happy to write just about that and write
Sorry
reams
to
and reams.
interrupt. Sorry to interrupt. Meanwhile, because I just put up that slide, meanwhile, you have to review a movie by Asman Bardvahi, but the headline is pretty cool. Kutai review: nepotism can get you taboo in a star cast, but it won't save a film that's going to the dogs. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, yeah, exactly. So, but the things that I will have to write about are other things. The things that are popular and commercial. And well, to be fair, Kutte wasn't either popular or commercial, but it wanted to be. Let's put it that way.
But it can it
Um,
be fun? Like, I mean, this sounds to me, sorry, I'm jumping in here, but like if you have to, you might, oh my God, they make me watch this stupid goddamn movie. It's such garbage. But then at least, I mean, how do you then deal? Can you find like a kernel of something like, oh my God, at least I can write a creative trashing of this movie, let's say.
I think from a critic's point of view, one of the greatest tragedies is that when we trash things, those get read and enjoyed and savored by readers. But when we're trying to get someone to read something that we've liked or watch something that we've loved, that never goes viral. Just never. It's always the rants that everyone wants to read, and
Yeah.
it can be very frustrating. Like there will be at least 10 times more people who will pick up the review where I'm saying that this film is just should be flushed down the toilet. That's the one that will get read. Whereas the film that I would love people to watch, I will struggle to get that across.
And then
Because we
you might also be complicit then in making that movie a cult hit. Like this one mentioning toilets. Here is one of your reviews. Mission Majnu review.
Majnu,
Siddharth Malhotra looks for Pak nuclear plant, finds toilet.
that's almost literally the plot of the film, which is truly tragic because I think I put more time into writing that headline than they did for the whole script. Anyway, so but that review is a great example because I think more people have read that just because of that headline than a lot of good films that we've written about on the same website. But the thing is that the difficulty is that, for example, if I have to watch a show or review a film, then the amount of time that it takes me to do all of that, after doing that, I have to
Right,
switch off and then switch on my novel writing side, which works very differently from the
right.
critic side or the editor side, right? So that's the challenge, and that's what becomes really hard to do a lot of the times, because it's not just about being exhausted or not having enough time in the day, which of course is a problem, but it's not just that. It's that it's like you're using the same tool. It's like you're using the
Right?
same device for
That's right.
20 different things.
Yeah.
And the thing that you care most about is the 21st thing that you're going to do with that device. Like when you're using, if you, for those of you who remember using a pencil, you keep using that pencil. No matter how many times you sharpen it, after a point, it get blunts. Like it becomes hard to use that device because you've been using it for everything.
That is very well put. This reminds me. I profiled a friend of mine in Second Life who is a fantastic musician, and he plays here in Second Life. He does amazing stuff, kind of jazz, classical, and he has a lot of analog synthesizers. His day job is to write for a very popular German and animated show on German television, hugely popular show called Die Sendung mit der Maus. So everybody's looking, what? You're writing all this music? Oh my God, I'm so envious. This is like the coolest gig. And he says, well, it pays the bills, but it's incredibly exhausting. So it's exactly like you're saying. He's using the pencil, or in this case, his musical keyboard, like all day long. And then at the end of the day, he wants to do his own music, and very often he's just completely drained. While people on the
Yeah,
outside go like, wow, here is somebody who made his passion, he's living the dream. No, not
yeah, yeah.
necessarily.
But that said, I mean, it's also true that the kind of satisfaction that you get from being able to surround yourself with the things that you care about, even if it's not being done as you'd like it to be done, to love music and be surrounded by music for the whole day is a privilege,
Yeah.
to love the arts and to be able to live your life in a world of the arts. It's a privilege, frankly.
Well, uh, let's not get too much into my anti-capitalist stance, because if you would own the means of production, or if you would own filmcompanion.in and you would only review your things, then the situation would also, of course, be vastly different. You mentioned earlier Puchku. Now, Puchku, I'm putting up the slide, a book for Puchku, illustrated by Rajiv IP,
Hype,
correct? IP.
hype, hype. Yeah,
A fantastic book about this girl Puchku, and we this is freely available. You can download this. Puchku is constantly reading. Look at this. She's not the mother saying, "Have a bath, eat your food." No, she's reading. She's reading. She's reading, and reading while she should do her homework. The mother doesn't know where she is. She's reading. She's reading. She's immersed in a book at all times. And then the wonderful thing is she goes to the library, and I'm not going to spoil the ending. Oh, this is very funny. So her friends here, her peers say, "Why are you always reading, Puchku?" Asks Boltu. "Come watch a cartoon instead," says Dodla. Um, but she goes to the library, and then the library, the horror is that the library she has read all books in the library. But here you write, um, Puchko explaining to her friends why she's reading books. She says, when you put words together, they make sentences, and sentences become stories. Read it, and whoosh, you are in another world. I really love that. This is just an amazing book. I'm gonna get a bunch of copies and just hand this out to friends with little kids, because talk a little bit about your your relationship with books. I mean, guessing through this story that we're aligned in believing that the true immersive metaverse that everybody's talking about is really a book, because the book makes you travel, teleport to worlds, inhabit completely different people, meet people that you would not be able to meet if you would be able to live 500 or years or longer or whatever. What is your
yeah.
relationship with books?
One of love. That's it. I think my earliest memories are of hearing stories, and I started reading quite young because I was an only child and in a house full of books and surrounded by readers as well. So that was great. And the story of Puchko actually came from the fact that so my parents, they didn't have a separate shelf for me or anything like that. It was just that whatever I could reach, I was free to read. And what they basically did was whatever they thought was grown up stuff, uh, I don't know, adult literature, whatever you want to call it. Basically, they put those on higher shelves, and so I realized after a point that there were books that were being actively kept out of my reach. So naturally, then I wanted those books specifically. It didn't matter that I couldn't quite understand what the hell was going on, but I wanted those books. So Albert Camus will be mine. It does not matter that I'm 3.5 years old. Étranger is mine. So that was my relationship with books. I mean, they were friends, they were portals, they were companions, they were things that comforted me when the world didn't. Uh, they made me see the world in a more comprehensible way. Like it made sense of the chaos that was otherwise often very perplexing and difficult to make sense of. Um,
Mm.
I've always seen it as what you just said, and what I wrote for Puchku, that you it's the truly immersive universe, and it's one that it's such a special relationship, right? Like you have with a book, the writer writes
Mhm.
something, and you as a reader complete it.
Mhm.
It's such a special and fragile, delicate, like filigree relationship. And it's like constantly being wrought and made anew with every time you read or reread a book.
And that's
I
what
felt that
movies
since I was a
cannot do.
kid.
Come on, let's shit on movies for a little bit. You're on No, I mean, I know I say this tongue in cheek, but there's great practitioners in audiovisual media, but I always say if a book um if a book is important to me, I cannot watch the film or the series, even if it's made by the most dedicated team or most talented people, because it will limit the the world that I have already created in my head. And even, I mean, I
Yes.
acknowledge it's a different person's vision. I'm not knocking that vision. I'm not saying this is the wrong vision or mine is the right one, but mine is the rich one that I don't want to have reduced by something else.
Yeah, it's also, I mean, I've enjoyed occasionally adaptations of books, but and it's fine. I mean, go ahead, knock yourself out, make whatever you will. But I quite like the the experience of a story sort of taking shape and characters taking shape so that you start seeing them in your head. Like you kind of, it's, I think it's basically my God complex. I
Mhm.
like feeling that sense of power where I'm
Yeah,
basically manifesting something into reality. And it is real for me because if I'm caring about a character, if I'm finding myself absorbed and concerned about how a story is going, then then it's working for me, and it gives me a certain creative power to manifest it into a certain kind of reality.
that's it.
So yeah, it's great fun, and it's more expansive than we realize. That's the thing. The thing with books is that no matter how deeply you describe something or read a description of something, there's still gaps between the letters and the sounds and the sentences, and uh, I think most bibliophiles, most serious readers live in those gaps. They create out of those gaps, and that's the creativity. That's the creative part of reading that makes it very interesting for me.
Jana, you can articulate these things. It's almost like you're a professional writer. I struggle with
Crazy, right?
articulating. I struggle with articulating. And now you said, you're the God. You're basically manifesting this. This is exactly what it is. you're manifesting characters and worlds through this process of yeah, turning these black letters into these worlds. Uh,
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know what? Okay, so Shyla, who couldn't be here today, she pulled a
Hmm.
few slides. What we do here with the volunteer team, Monkey and Shyla, they look at some of the existing interviews that our guests have given, and sometimes they pull quotes. You know, I don't bother with that because I'm an elitist and I'm just reading books. But now I realized, and I'm not sure how to interpret this quote that Shyla pulled. It sounds to me that we're also siblings from another mother in terms of our a little bit of a elitism, possibly snobbery. I say this in with love for this term, but you said in an interview, I think we do these hierarchies right, and in the hierarchy, literary fiction is right up there, the shining example, and then there's everyone else. I think you can learn from any book if it is written well. A badly written piece of literary fiction will teach you exactly nothing. That is a minor detail we tend to forget. What I hear you say here is that you don't have a problem with the term literary fiction. You think that's a term that has its use.
uh do I think? Yeah, I do think it's a term that has its use because
So
it's
do
an
I, but
aspiration.
people call me like, "Oh, you're an elitist. You're against romance or whatever." I said, "No, no, no.
No,
All
no,
these
I'm
genre
an
they come."
extremely I'm
Yeah.
an extremely avid reader of romances. I will not have a word said against romance on my watch. Thank you very much. But no, no. But the thing is that, see, here's the thing. Anybody who's calling you elitist for saying that there is such a thing called literary fiction is assuming a hierarchy where literary fiction stands above a romance. I
Mm.
don't think it does. Literary fiction is a genre, such as romance, so is crime, so is science fiction. I'm not assuming a hierarchy. I'm not assuming that literary fiction is better than science fiction or lesser than romance. I'm
Mhm.
saying that if there's a good book, it will be good irrespective of genre. But genres do exist,
Mhm.
especially now when publishers, anybody who's writing formally, is pigeonholed into these marketable categories, which is all that genres are, frankly. They're just to help book shop owners be able to shelve the books. But it has become something that has conventions. So every genre has its own conventions and its own sort of little lexicon, and you follow all of that. Inevitably, when you're a crime fiction writer, you will write in keeping all of those things in mind. Like I remember when I was sort of talking about Hushabye Baby with my publisher. She's fantastic and just all around wonderful woman. But she was like, "Are you sure you want to do a crime fiction in which there's no dead body? Because crime means murder, surely, right?" And I was like, "Well, there are some people who would say this is murder, so I guess it is. I mean, I this is what I want to write about. So can we just do this?" And she was like, it's going to be really hard for people to wrap their heads around the idea of a crime fiction in which there is no dead body,
Mhm.
because that's what that's what is the convention. So there are things that have become straitjackets now, but the fact of the matter is, like, leaving aside what are the conventions of a genre, the fact of a genre does not mean there's a hierarchy. We are assuming there's a hierarchy. Just because something is called literary fiction doesn't mean it's better.
Mhm. I think no, very well said. I think the reason is why people sometimes have very get a little bit triggered by this is that that literary fiction in some circles I think is still seen in this hierarchical way, that it
Oh,
is
absolutely.
at the top.
Publishing.
Yeah,
Publishing sees it like that. I mean, whether we like it or not, or whether the
it's
publishers will
basically
admit
like
to this or not.
the equivalent at the Oscars is when Germany makes a movie with a theme from the Nazi period and the Third Reich, trying to work that through. That's the Oscar contender. They put that in the mix. Um,
Hmm.
I don't know. That's not a perfect analogy. I'm the master of analogies. DJ Flex says, I like those books which pick your path with multiple ending books and whodunit types. Oh, you mean choose your own adventure books? Actually, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Those are
Uh,
great fun.
yeah, 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 totally. I need to do a special show about that. Um, Monkey says reading books allows you to see the stories differently when you reread it again. Also, when you have become a different person in different stages of your life. I'm very
That's
happy
true.
with your with what you said about literary fiction. I'm gonna rewatch that and then transcribe it and have it ready to fire off when that discussion comes back up. Now we're going to wrap the program tightly today, but we have one more reading. Oh no, before I do that, these other activities of yours, um, you appeared in the podcast with Anuya and Sharon
Yeah,
from Books on Toast. So
yeah.
this is contemporary literature here. So you do these things, and I'm assuming that these are big fun. What do you think about this whole um, booktube phenomenon? I mean, it's really amazing. There's a lot of really fantastic shows that deal with books, and that gives me tremendous hope. Like on YouTube, it's amazing how popular some of these shows are that talk about contemporary literature or even the canon and other aspects.
Mm. I think it's great. One of the things that I love about YouTube and shows like this, also podcasts. So Sharon and Books on Toast is something that Sharon and Anuya run, and it's a super fun channel. They were very kind and brought me on when this was right around the time that Hushabye Baby came out. I also there's a podcast that I did 2 seasons of with a friend of mine called Supriya, and we called it the Lit Pickers,
Oh
and we
yeah.
talked about different things, all things literary, basically. Great fun again. One of the things that I love about the internet is that it, you know, in the when I was hearing about this the other day. Basically, at in the 1800s, roughly, I think when coffee houses started coming up in Europe, um, they were considered spaces that were rife with dissenters, anarchists, and uh, all sorts of like complicated people. Let's put it that way. And they were known as penny universities.
Oops, the audio is
Oops,
doing
the
weird things.
audio is doing weird things.
Oh,
You
now
hear
we have
me?
feedback. Oh, we have
Oh,
we're
we're,
slowed
we're
down and I hear
slowed
myself double.
down and I hear myself.
Oops.
Oops.
Oh boy.
Boy,
Can you hear me?
can you hear me? I can hear you.
We're slowed down. We're on a different sample
Different
rate right
sample
now.
rate right
This is
now.
quite hilarious, as if we're
Just
completely
for
stoned.
completely stoned.
But I'm a
But
teetotaler. I
I'm a
think we need to
teetotaler. I
reinitiate
think we need
the Discord
the
call,
Discord call. Okay.
and let's hope that that
And
works. I'm going to
let's
hang up
hope
and call
that
you right
you
back.
right back. Okay.
Let's see if that
Let's
works.
see if that
Oh no,
works.
it's still
Oh
bad.
no, it's still bad.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Um,
Um,
Now,
Now,
Isabel and Jana,
Isabel
please also
and
hang up the
Jana,
call so I
please
can start
all
the fresh
start the
call
fresh call.
on Discord. And folks on YouTube, please bear with us. We'll be right back. Call. And let's see, the call is coming back.
Is
Hello.
that okay?
Yes, we're back. Awesome. Very nice. Now, where were we? Yes, nice activities on BookTube and Lit Pickers. I posted that in here. and just an all-around hope for the
Yeah,
world.
I was just saying that, Lit Pickers was great fun. And we talked about all sorts of literary things. And one of the great things about the internet is that it lets you sort of learn stuff
Hmm.
for free. And just
Hmm.
because people are talking about what they think is important to them.
Hmm. Right, you can learn all sorts of things. You can learn about the great um, Indian painter Ravi Varma. This is my segue. Or you can learn that women are to blame that you don't get a job. You see? No, there we are again with
The
the theme
world is your oyster on the
of
internet,
the
basically.
the
Whatever
right.
you'd like to learn, you will learn.
Exactly. Do you want to broaden your mind, or do you want to have your preconceived notions reconfirmed by grifters and demagogues? Now, speaking of Ravi Varma, who was Ravi Varma, and why did you write a book about him called The Painter?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a good question to which I still don't think I have a very good answer. But
You wanted to be
sorry.
commercially successful, so
Raja
you
Ravi
wrote
Verma
about
is one of the pioneers of modern Indian art in that he he sort of brought in European techniques to Indian art, and this was at a time when oil painting and Western oil painting was something that Indians were not allowed to practice. It was colonial India at that point of time. So the few people who did do oil painting, they effectively taught themselves, and the most accomplished amongst them was Ravi Varma, who went on to become among not among he was the most expensive Indian artist of his time. Like, he did portraits for all sorts of elite in the country. But what was interesting about him, in addition to the fact that he became an artist at a time when being an artist was not considered a profession or particularly respectable, but
Mhm.
he brought respect by becoming an artist to the profession. What's also interesting is that it didn't sit very comfortably on his shoulders that his work was only seen by uh, aristocrats who paid for these, who commissioned him to do their portraits. So he set up in his later years, once he was very successful, he set up a print business. He called it the Ravi Varma Press, actually, Ravi Varma Lithographic Print Press. And he made prints of his work,
Mhm.
which was which he wanted, people to be able to
To
own their own bit of art.
right.
And that ended up having an enormous impact because his stuff impacted was used for commercial stuff. Like, it was used in advertisements, it was used on calendars, and a lot of the kitsch of calendar art from India that you see today, it's actually from Ravi Varma's artwork.
Right, because when I looked around, and I don't have it here in the slide, I'm putting some stuff on the slides here, but he was on ads for like washing powder or something, or other things, or soap.
Yeah, exactly. Hair oil, soap, tea, everything. Like, the elements
That
from his paintings were used for everything.
that's amazing. So what and what was the most fascinating for you? Here's the real life context. 1848 to 1906 he lived. What was most fascinating for you? I mean, why did you write this book, The Painter? That he was at
What
that
I
juncture
found
between.
really interesting about him is that his artwork created an idea of Indian beauty that had not existed before. And it became popular through, first of all, he created this idea of an Indian beauty by taking elements from different parts of India and creating a composite of sorts, which was not rooted in any kind of realism, but was an idealized sense of India and Indian beauty, particularly feminine Indian beauty. And then, because of the popularity of the prints that he produced through his press, and other presses started plagiarizing his stuff because it was so successful, this sort of, disseminated this idea of beauty, which we've ended up inheriting and sharing actually across the country and now arguably across the world, because of the kind of popularity that Indian kitsch has.
Hmm. I can't think of the name of where when we lived in California. He had a huge gallery in Carmel. Maybe somebody can refresh my memory. Oh, Thomas Kincaid. Thomas Kincaid. Yeah, look him up. But I don't want to get too sidetracked. He's an American painter, and I am not qualified to compare Ravi Varma or his impact in India to Thomas Kincaid as he has today in today's culture. But yeah, so these paintings, uh, were they? But before we do the reading, I'm curious now that the European occupiers, they didn't like him. They didn't like that that he was an Indian guy being so successful. Did they feel a little threatened, the practitioners of art in Europe?
So he didn't, he had a very limited following outside of India because obviously oil paintings were being done by everybody and their first cousin in Europe. So that wasn't such a big deal. But what was interesting was that, in the colonies, what would happen is that uh, artists who were less successful in Europe, they would come around for tours of Asia and America and make a little bit of money by doing commissioned portraits and stuff. And Ravi Varma was tried to learn oil painting from one of these visiting artists, and he flatly refused to teach Ravi Varma after he realized that this guy actually does have some talent. It
Mm.
didn't mean that Ravi Varma didn't learn. He taught himself ultimately. But what's quite interesting is that when he set up the press many, many years later, um, the press was something that he imported from Germany. And along with the press came a whole German team of, I think, 15 people to set up and run the press in India.
Wow. Wow. This is fascinating. Was he, how is this seen today? I mean, when you talk about, kitsch and a certain look that is being, exported, what do critics say? What's his reputation today? Are people like a little weary that India is seen through his eyes, that he had such an impact?
I don't think there's a weariness in that sense. I mean, it's a very commercial version. It's like, I don't know, you wouldn't look at manga representations and say that all of Japan is like that, right? So it's kind of the
Well,
same,
I can tell
same
you a lot of Germans who think of
very
themselves
similar.
as very
We've
cultured. They're
appropriated a
Oops.
lot of what Ravi Varma sort of, created because we like how it looks. Like like I said, it's a shared notion of beauty, which is
Mhm.
not rooted in much by way of realism, but it's still beautiful in its own way. Critically, his stuff feels romanticized, exoticized, somewhat reductive today, I think. But there's no doubt about the fact that his accomplishment at a technical level of what he was able to do both as an oil painter, but also in terms of the sophistication that he brought to prints at the time. That was his to his credit for sure.
Interesting. I was just gonna, sorry, I was talking over you. I was saying, when people see that this is a stylized notion, or that people are not confusing this with the reality in India, sometimes I feel that I have met Germans who are a little disappointed that they come to America and they don't see everybody looking like the Marlboro Man. That's a little bit of an oversimplification, but that's just to say that
Yeah.
a certain exported cliche of sort of a cultural stereotype. There are people who do expect that, and if they're not getting that served that as a tourist, they're kind of disappointed. Um, I don't know. Maybe the Americans that come to Bavaria don't see everybody running around in lederhosen doing Schuhblatt, ding, 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 ding.
So
Um,
disappointing. Why not?
Jana, when you visit me here in Munich, I will wear lederhosen and I will do.
I will
Let's
hold you
read.
to that. You absolutely have to do that if I land up in Munich.
Hey, I learned accordion as a child, so I can play some of the traditional stuff. Ah, traumatizing. Let's do a little reading. What do we hear from the painter?
Okay, I'm just going to read a little bit, which is actually from towards the end of the book, basically. So essentially, Ravi Varma set up this press, and it was very popular. Other presses started plagiarizing from him, and the net result was that it ran into losses. So he tried to sell it, and the person who ended up buying it was a guy called Fritz Schleicher, who was part of the German crew that
Hmm.
was brought down to run the press. So when the Ravi Varma Fine Art Lithographic Press was bought by Schleicher in 1903 for the sum of rupees 25,000 rupees, Schleicher inherited about 6,000 rupees of debt. And it would be a lasting source of amusement to Schleicher that the press, which essentially printed Hindu mythological scenes, was a loss making venture when it was owned by two devout and pedigreed Hindu men like Ravi Varma and his brother. However, under the management of a German man who had a beer cellar and many mistresses, the press became profitable. The fact was that Schleicher was a good businessman who balanced his expenditures with his demand and had a nose for what people wanted. Under him, the Ravi Varma Press gave India the icons it needed as a country came into being. Heroes, gods, goddesses, they were all coming out of the steam driven lithographic press in glorious color. Schleicher's competitors stole from him and occasionally he returned the favor, but thanks to Ravi Varma's paintings, because when he had bought the press, he also bought the right to print 89 paintings by Ravi Varma, Schleicher had a stock of images that everyone wanted. Schleicher was liberal about who used his plates. The print of Mohini, a very famous painting by Ravi Varma, sold everything from hair oil to health tonics. The mythological paintings were used for posters, calendars, postcards. Along the way, Ravi Varma recognized by this time that even though he didn't own the press, his work was being plagiarized, and this was a problem. It robbed what was his press in his mind, even though Schleicher was running it. It robbed his press of exclusivity and it sullied his own name when amateurish versions of his paintings were peddled as his work. What he didn't realize, though, that the plagiarized paintings were unwittingly helping him create a legacy. The
Hmm.
fake Ravi Varmas were often odes to the originals. Perhaps if there hadn't been as many copies, Ravi Varma's visions of village belles and traditional beauties would not have been imprinted upon all of our minds as ideals that would be passed down generation to generation. The profusion of plagiarized paintings served to create a stereotype of what is a Ravi Varma painting. That remains instantly recognizable even today, whether it's in a vintage print or a fashion shoot celebrating what is called traditional look. The man who owns a corner shop in a touristy section of Trivandrum today doesn't know he has a watered down version of a Ravi Varma painting. To a large part of middle class India, the artist's name is synonymous with beauty. Insipid, perhaps, but still a vision of perfection. Even if the corner shop owner doesn't know Ravi Varma's name, he shares that notion of beauty.
And that's Deepanjana Pal reading from the painter. And our understanding is that it's really hard to get this book. But I think on Amazon you can still get it. Thank you, Jana. This opens another really fascinating uh, aspect of inquiry. Now that I'm gonna be stuck with this in my mind because it is just utterly fascinating that this man created such a long-lasting um, image that we have of India.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because it's both traditional and backdated and old fashioned and modern all at the same time.
And Germans are also involved.
And Germans are involved.
That's the most. That is to me the most important aspect. Why I need to stay on this. I need to stay on this story. Okay, so we're going to wrap up the program. Deepanjana Pal, author of Hushaby Baby, the Puchku series. That's an entire series, I think. Like how many books are there? Like three or four or
Sorry, they're right
something.
now two, but
Ah,
there's a third one that's going to come out soon.
this book, The Painter, the Film Companion, the Podcast, the Lit Pickers, all sorts of things you should check out. Get the Hushaby Baby. It's really, really good. Um, okay, I'm not going to ask you why it's not on every airport. Did I already ask that? Like Sacred
Hey, just
Games?
put
No,
it in every airport. I'm not
that,
complaining.
that's right. I could just order like 100 copies and then fly around and put it in every airport, right? I mean, it's not against the law, like sex selective abortion would be. Um,
Just, make sure you're also, carrying your accordion and wearing that lederhosen thing, and, just make sure the look is right when you're doing this.
I'm the most Bavarian fan of you, and I'm traveling around to just, just spread the word.
Thank you so much. This has been really fun. So, thank you so much for asking me to be part of this and for making my beautiful cloud. This has been really special.
Thank you. We're really thrilled, and thank you, wonderful audience today here in Second Life. Also, our audience in on YouTube. Big thanks to Kitten. I hope Kitten is feeling good. Kitten is always supporting the show. Thank you for your support, Kitten. Um, if you like this show, you could consider supporting the YouTube channel or donating through Ko-fi. It's linked on the YouTube. The show is the Second Life Book Club happens to go live every Wednesday at 12 o'clock Pacific time. Sometimes we have a different time. I'm going to get to that in just a second. The worlds are obviously persistent, though we have 4 islands now. The fourth island is not linked with a teleport yet. You have to fly over there, but that's the whole Perry Roden setup over there. It's really, really awesome. The show is produced by me. The camera and the sound is by Isabel Sharan. The avatars are made by Bespoke Caravan, and the research is by Shaila and Monkey. And the location is always second.live/book club. Through that URL, I'm putting a teleport. If you go in world, then you will end up at the where the show is. Draxtor.com/SL Book Club. You can see the calendar, and there's also an email where you can send if you have ideas for future shows or whatever. Again, the sponsor, the makers of most avatars is Bespoke Caravan. They're also sponsoring the show. They give us a little bit of Linden dollars where we can go out and buy props and stuff like that. Bespoke is specializing in fantastical avatars, non-humanoid, really, really amazing stuff. And the other sponsor of the program is, of course, Arden Schwartzman with the Black Forest. He's making a lot of different things, but one of the coolest things that he makes are these board games. Your gadgets, games, vehicles, and more. But the board games, the playable board games, are absolutely amazing. Low land impact, high detail. They all work here in Second Life right out of the box. Honestly, you know, he's sponsoring us, so I'm contractually obligated to say he's awesome, but he happens to be really awesome. Now, the next show is not next Wednesday. The next show is actually this Saturday because Zelda Knight, the editor of Africa Risen, this amazing new anthology of African stories from the African continent and the African diaspora. Absolutely amazing anthology. And last Wednesday we had a few glitches. Zelda was looking very strange, and I didn't have a beard, so we were redoing this Saturday at 12 o'clock Pacific time. Do not miss that show. Really awesome. Not maybe equally awesome like Jana today, kind of. I think Jana's a little bit more awesome.
Oh,
Let's see.
thank you.
Oh my God, Zelda is calling me on the phone. She said, "What are you talking about?" Um, everybody have a wonderful day, evening, afternoon. Thank you for coming. And Jana, it's late over where you are. Good night, and we'll see you all, well, next Saturday, actually. Goodbye.
Thanks again. And yeah, everyone have a good day, night, wherever you are according to time zone. Thanks so much.